Jason had always believed that the land his grandfather left him was just a piece of nostalgia, a quiet corner of the world that remained untouched, waiting for the day he'd finally decide what to do with it. Life had kept him busy, and the small plot sat there for years, undisturbed, existing as a distant memory of childhood summers and the scent of oak trees under the golden sun. But nothing could have prepared him for the gut-wrenching, rage-inducing moment when he scrolled through his phone one lazy Saturday morning and saw something that made his blood run cold. An article popped up on his feed, a feature on a stunning new mansion hailed as the pride of the neighborhood. The headline boasted about the visionary leadership of the homeowner association president, a woman named Karen Westwood, who had supposedly transformed an unused lot into a luxurious dream home. Jason wouldn't have given it a second glance if not for the nagging sense of familiarity tugging at him. As he stared at the photos, something about the land, the background, the trees, the very shape of it felt disturbingly recognizable. And then, like a punch to the gut, he saw it. The ancient oak tree with its twisted branches reaching toward the sky. The very tree that had stood tall on his grandfather's land. His land. Jason sat up so fast his coffee spilled, soaking into his sweatpants, but he barely noticed. His mind was reeling. There was no mistaking it. The mansion wasn't just built on a random plot of land. It was built on his land. Without his permission. Without his knowledge. And the woman smugly taking credit for it in the article had claimed it as her own. His pulse pounded as he scrambled through his desk, tossing papers aside until he found the old property deed, the official proof that the land legally belonged to him. His name was still on it, clear as day. There was no mention of a sale, no transfer, no record of anything that could justify why his land was now home to a massive high-end house owned by a woman he had never met. How was this even possible? His hands clenched the papers so tightly they crumpled, and a bitter laugh escaped his lips. This had to be some kind of mistake. Some ridiculous clerical error. But deep down he already knew that wasn't the case. Nobody accidentally builds an entire multi-million-dollar house on the wrong land. This was deliberate. This was theft. And Jason wasn't about to let it slide. By the time he pulled up in front of the property, his knuckles were white against the steering wheel. The once empty land where he had played as a child, where his grandfather had taught him how to fly a kite, where he had dreamed of maybe building something of his own one day, was now unrecognizable. The mansion stood tall, arrogant in its presence, a symbol of wealth and power that had no right to be there. A perfectly manicured lawn stretched in front of it, and an iron gate, complete with a private security system, ensured that no one uninvited could step foot onto what was still legally his property. Jason barely had time to register the sheer audacity of it before he marched straight up to the gate and pressed the intercom button, his heart hammering against his ribs. Static crackled for a moment before a clipped, irritated female voice responded. "Yes. Who is this?" Jason exhaled sharply, trying to keep his voice level despite the fury bubbling beneath the surface. "This is Jason Crawford. I own this land and I need to speak to whoever is living here." A long pause. Then the voice returned, colder this time. "Mr. Crawford, this property is under the jurisdiction of the homeowner association. I'm Karen Westwood, the HOA president and the owner of this home. If you have any concerns, you'll need to go through the proper channels." Jason's jaw tightened. "There are no proper channels, Karen. This land was never part of any HOA, and it sure as hell wasn't yours to build on. I have the deed in my hand." Another pause. This one felt heavier, almost calculated. Then a sharp, dismissive chuckle. "I don't appreciate baseless accusations, Mr. Crawford. This home was built with full approval. If you feel there's been a misunderstanding, you're welcome to contact the HOA office." The intercom went silent. The gate remained closed. Jason stared at it, his entire body rigid with anger. This woman had stolen his land, built a palace on it, and had the audacity to act as if he was the one out of line. But what infuriated him more than anything was the way she had cut him off like he was nothing, like his rights didn't matter, like she had already won. His hands curled into fists as he took a step back, glaring at the mansion that shouldn't exist. If Karen thought she could just brush him aside, she was in for a rude awakening. He wasn't about to back down. She had picked the wrong man to screw over. And if she wanted a fight, he was more than ready to give her one. Jason didn't sleep that night. He sat in his apartment, surrounded by papers, his laptop open with multiple tabs of property records, zoning laws and real estate fraud cases. His fingers drummed against the desk as he stared at the deed, the irrefutable proof that the land belonged to him. And yet somehow Karen Westwood had managed to build a house on it, live in it and confidently claim it as her own. His conversation with her at the gate replayed in his mind, her dismissive tone, the way she shut him down as if he was an inconvenience, not the rightful owner. His frustration boiled over as he slammed his laptop shut. He needed answers. He needed to know how this happened. But most of all, he needed to make sure Karen regretted ever thinking she could steal from him. The next morning he took the first step toward uncovering the truth. He drove to the county records office, a place he hadn't set foot in since the land was passed down to him. The dull fluorescent lights and rows of filing cabinets reeked of bureaucracy, the kind of place where important documents got lost under piles of meaningless paperwork. He approached the desk where a tired-looking clerk glanced up at him with zero enthusiasm. "Help you," she muttered, already looking like she regretted asking. Jason slid the deed across the counter. "I need to pull all records related to this property. Any recent activity, transfers, annexations, anything at all." The clerk sighed like he had just ruined her day, but she took the document and typed into her computer. Jason watched her expression shift from boredom to mild confusion as she scrolled through the screen. Her eyebrows knitted together before she glanced up at him. "Looks like there was an annexation recorded a few years ago. This lot was added to the homeowner association's jurisdiction." Jason's stomach twisted. "That's impossible. That would require my consent." The clerk shrugged, clicking through the records. "Well, according to this, you did consent. There's a signed document here confirming it." Jason felt his breath catch in his throat. He leaned forward. "Pull it up. I need to see it." A few more clicks, a few more agonizing seconds, and then she turned the screen toward him. Jason's eyes locked onto the scanned document, his name neatly printed at the bottom, followed by a signature that was supposed to be his. Except, it wasn't. The moment he saw it, a bolt of anger shot through him. The signature was close but not exact. Someone had forged his name. His fingers gripped the edge of the counter as he forced himself to stay calm. "I never signed that." The clerk blinked at him. "Well, someone did." Jason inhaled sharply, forcing back the urge to throw something. Instead he took out his phone and snapped a picture of the document. If Karen had gone this far, she was more than just a greedy HOA tyrant. She was a full-blown criminal. His hands trembled with fury as he took the printed copy from the clerk, thanked her through clenched teeth and stormed out of the office. He sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Karen had committed fraud. That was undeniable. And now, she was living in a house built on stolen land with a forged document covering her tracks. Jason wasted no time. He called the first real estate attorney that popped up in his search results, a woman named Lisa Hartman who specialized in property disputes. Within an hour he was sitting in her office, sliding the document across her desk. She barely glanced at it before shaking her head. "That's a forgery," she said flatly. Jason's jaw tightened. "Yeah, I figured that part out." Lisa leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen against her desk. "Here's the thing. A fraudulent annexation is serious, but it doesn't immediately void ownership. If we can prove this was done illegally, we can reverse it and she'll have no legal claim to the land." Jason's stomach tightened. "And the house?" Lisa smirked. "If the land wasn't legally annexed, the house is trespassing. She built it on property she doesn't own. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen." A slow grin spread across Jason's face. "So, I can take everything from her?" Lisa shrugged. "Legally? Yes. Morally? That's up to you." Jason had no doubt in his mind. Karen had stolen from him, lied, and used her power to manipulate the system. She deserved whatever was coming to her. Over the next few days, Jason and Lisa worked together to gather evidence. They pulled more records, dug into the HOA's past dealings, and even spoke to a few of Karen's neighbors. What they uncovered only made things worse. For Karen, she had a history of shady dealings, using her position as HOA president to bully residents, issue absurd fines, and even threaten homeowners who didn't comply with her ridiculous rules. She was, in every sense of the word, a dictator in a pantsuit. And it wasn't just Jason who had suffered. There were others. One of them was Frank, an elderly veteran who had been fined repeatedly for minor infractions, like having a flagpole that was an inch too tall. Another was Elena, a single mother who had nearly lost her home after Karen imposed a sudden, unexplained HOA fee increase. Both of them had stories of Karen's corruption, and both were more than happy to help expose her. Jason knew he had enough to take her down legally, but he wanted more. He wanted to hit her where it hurt. And then, as he sat outside her gated mansion, staring at the symbol of her stolen success, an idea formed in his mind. If Karen thought she was untouchable, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. Jason knew the legal battle was inevitable, but taking Karen down in court wasn't enough. He wanted her to feel it. He wanted her to experience the slow, creeping panic that came with losing everything. She had stolen his land, built her castle, and laughed in his face. Now it was time to strip away her power brick by brick. And he had the perfect plan. The first step was to expose her. Publicly. Karen thrived on her image as the proud, sophisticated HOA president who had transformed the neighborhood. Every time she spoke at town hall meetings, she painted herself as a visionary, someone who had single-handedly elevated the community. But Jason knew the truth. The fraudulent land annexation, the misuse of HOA funds, the countless stories of residents she had bullied into submission. This wasn't just about one stolen property anymore. It was about years of unchecked power. And Jason was about to put all of it under a microscope. With Lisa's help, he compiled every piece of evidence they had. The forged signature, the illegal zoning approval, the financial records showing Karen had funneled HOA money into personal projects, and the testimonies of Frank, Elena, and several others who had been victimized by her. Then he sent the entire file to every major local news station, real estate blog, and social media watchdog group he could think of. If Karen thought she could hide behind bureaucracy, she was about to find out how quickly public outrage could tear through a reputation. The second step was to turn the neighborhood against her. Jason wasn't just going to expose her, he was going to make sure she had no allies left. He reached out to HOA members one by one, presenting them with undeniable proof of Karen's corruption. He wasn't surprised when most of them admitted they had suspected something was off but had been too afraid to challenge her. The fear of fines, harassment, and retaliatory rule changes had kept them silent. But now they were angry. And an angry neighborhood was a dangerous thing. Karen, of course, caught wind of the brewing rebellion. The HOA office received an influx of complaints and demands for an emergency meeting. Residents who had once been too scared to confront her were now openly calling for her removal. Jason could only imagine the fury building inside her as her carefully crafted empire started to crumble. But she wasn't about to go down quietly. One evening, just as Jason was finalizing the legal case with Lisa, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, already suspecting who it might be. A slow, controlled voice greeted him. "You're making a mistake." Jason smirked. "Karen, how's the house?" There was a long silence before she spoke again, her voice dripping with fake calm. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this won't end well for you. I have resources, connections. This neighborhood, these people, they respect me. You're an outsider. No one's going to take your side." Jason leaned back in his chair, letting her words settle for a moment before responding. "Karen, have you checked the news today?" Another pause. A shorter one this time. He could practically hear her scrambling for her laptop, her perfectly manicured fingers clicking furiously on the keyboard. And then a sharp intake of breath. She had found the articles. The reports exposing her fraudulent land grab. The screenshots of HOA funds mysteriously disappearing under her leadership. The residents coming forward with their horror stories. Jason grinned. "Seems like your resources and connections have some explaining to do." Her voice lost its fake calm. "You son of a..." He hung up before she could finish. But Karen wasn't done. The next day, an emergency HOA meeting was called, one that she fully intended to use to regain control. Jason, of course, made sure to attend. He stood at the back of the crowded room as Karen took the floor, her usual air of confidence replaced by barely concealed frustration. She started with the usual tactics, claiming that the accusations were misunderstandings, that the financial discrepancies were clerical errors, that the residents speaking against her were misinformed. But it wasn't working. People interrupted. They shouted. They demanded accountability. And then Jason stepped forward. He held up the forged annexation document, the one with his faked signature, and let the room fall into a tense silence. You all recognize this, right? The document that supposedly allowed my land to be part of the HOA? Here's the thing. This signature isn't mine. It's a forgery. A crime. And the woman standing in front of you committed it. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Karen's face paled, but she tried to regain control. That's absurd, she spat. You can't prove. Oh, but I can, Jason interrupted smoothly, pulling out his phone. He tapped the screen and a recording played. An audio file of Karen's conversation with a contractor. A conversation in which she explicitly admitted the land wasn't legally hers but assured the contractor that she'd take care of it. The room erupted. Residents shouted over one another. Some demanded her immediate resignation. Others called for a full investigation into every fine, every project, every decision she had ever made. Karen's carefully constructed authority collapsed in real time, right in front of everyone she had manipulated for years. Jason watched her expression shift from anger to panic. She knew she had lost control. And the best part? This wasn't even the grand finale. As the meeting spiraled into chaos, Jason leaned in close to her and whispered, just loud enough for only her to hear. You built your house on stolen land, Karen. And in about 24 hours, you're going to find out exactly what happens when you mess with the wrong person. Then he turned and walked out, leaving her standing there, drowning in the wreckage of her own making. Karen had always believed she was untouchable. For years she had ruled the HOA like a dictator, bending rules to her will, punishing anyone who dared to challenge her authority. But now she wasn't just facing angry homeowners, she was facing the law. And Jason made sure she felt every ounce of pressure as her empire came crashing down. The morning after the HOA meeting, Jason stood outside the county courthouse, watching as Lisa walked toward him, a thick folder tucked under her arm. He barely had to speak. He already knew the case was airtight. The fraudulent annexation, the forged signature, the financial mismanagement. It was all there, clear as day. And now, Karen wasn't just facing the loss of her house. She was facing criminal charges. This should be fun, Lisa said, smirking as they stepped inside. Karen was already in the courtroom, sitting at the defendant's table, her usual smugness absent. She was dressed in a stiff, conservative suit, her expression carefully neutral, but Jason could see the tension in her posture. She knew she had no way out of this. The trial was swift. Jason's evidence was overwhelming, and Karen's legal team struggled to spin her actions as anything other than blatant fraud. The county records clerk testified that the annexation document had been processed without verification, relying solely on Karen's status as HOA president. The contractor who built the house confirmed that Karen assured him the paperwork was in order. And then there was the forensic expert, who testified that Jason's signature on the annexation document had been forged. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, that she had truly believed the land was part of the HOA's jurisdiction, but Lisa was relentless. Are you saying you accidentally built a multi-million-dollar home on land you didn't own? Lisa asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Karen's jaw tightened. Lisa didn't give her time to answer. Because according to this email exchange between you and your contractor, you explicitly state, and I quote, "The paperwork isn't finalized, but it won't be an issue." Karen's face drained of color. The courtroom murmured. By the time the judge ruled in Jason's favor, it was almost too easy. The annexation was declared invalid. The house was deemed an illegal structure. Karen was ordered to vacate the property immediately. And as if that wasn't enough, she was hit with a fraud charge and a hefty fine for misappropriating HOA funds. Jason sat back, exhaling as the verdict was read. It was done. The land was his again. Karen had lost. But the best part? The house, the one she had spent years designing, bragging about, pouring stolen money into, was set for demolition. The eviction notice gave Karen 30 days to remove her belongings, but Jason knew she wasn't going to make it easy. True to form, she fought the ruling, filing appeals, delaying the inevitable. But it didn't matter. Jason had already taken the final step to ensure her downfall. He had made sure the entire neighborhood knew exactly what was happening. On the day of the eviction, homeowners gathered outside the mansion, watching as moving trucks pulled up to haul Karen's belongings away. The once feared HOA president now stood in the driveway, barking orders at the movers, her face flushed with humiliation. She avoided eye contact with the crowd, but Jason saw the way her hands trembled when she signed the final eviction papers. "Looks like you're out of power, Karen," Jason said as he approached, watching her struggle to maintain composure. She turned sharply, her eyes burning with anger. "You think you've won?" Jason chuckled. "Oh, I know I have." She glared at him, but there was nothing left for her to say. She had lost everything. And Jason wasn't done yet. 2 days later, demolition crews arrived at the property. The neighborhood turned it into an event. People brought lawn chairs, drinks, and cameras, treating it like a front-row seat to karma. Someone even brought popcorn. Jason stood near the old oak tree, the one piece of his grandfather's land that had remained untouched, and watched as the wrecking ball swung. The first hit shattered the front wall. The second sent the roof collapsing in on itself. With every crunch of wood and glass, Jason felt a little more of his frustration dissolve. By the time the mansion was reduced to rubble, it was as if it had never been there at all. The land was his again. And Karen? She had disappeared, her reputation in shambles, her fraudulent empire turned to dust. In the weeks that followed, Jason made plans for the land. Not a mansion, not an ego-driven monument, but something meaningful. He planted a small garden, built a bench under the oak tree, and finally, after years of neglect, started to make the space his own again. One evening, as he sat beneath the tree, watching the sun dip below the horizon, he received an unexpected letter. From Karen. Jason hesitated before opening it, half expecting a final attempt at defiance. But as he read the words, he was surprised. "I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I deserve it. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. You were right to fight for what was yours. I hope you can find peace on that land." Jason read the letter twice, then folded it and set it aside. Karen was gone. And for the first time in years, his land, felt whole again.